Stop for a moment and listen beneath the noise that keeps rehearsing your fears. You are not a fool dressing coincidences in holy clothes. You are a careful witness to a pattern that refuses to fade. Their name keeps surfacing where probability says it shouldn't. A song finds you at the exact second your chest tightens, narrating a sentence you never said out loud. Dreams arrive like conversations from a room you cannot enter by daylight. Dates, numbers, fragments of memory loop back and tie separate days into one thread. You have tried to argue with it, to call it projection or wishful thinking. But the pattern has a persistence that logic cannot cancel. This is how heaven speaks when words would be too small. Not once, not twice, but again and again until your tired heart has a bridge sturdy enough to cross the silent hours. God does not stutter. He repeats on purpose, so that when appearances accuse you of being naive, your memory can answer with evidence. You have asked the honest question that keeps good people awake. What if I am seeing what I want to see? What if I have turned stray sparks into constellations because I so badly want a sky? Hear the reply that will loosen your chest. When God confirms a thing repeatedly, it is never for entertainment. Repetition is mercy. It is scaffolding for the days when nothing seems to move and doubt grows loud. Each sign was placed like a plank under your feet so you could keep walking when your mind argued for retreat. Not to recruit you into chasing a person, not to cast you as the manager of destiny, but to anchor you in a posture that does not break itself to feel safe. He repeats because he knows that silence has a voice, and delay has a gravity, and without provision, your courage could be pulled under by both. Of course, you have asked the other question, the one that feels like a bruise. If he has confirmed this so many times, why the distance? Why the hush? Why do I feel invisible to the very person God keeps highlighting? The answer is simpler and kinder than you think. Repetition is not permission to force outcomes. It is permission to wait with dignity. You are not the only one being spoken to. The same way a sudden warmth visits you at noon, it visits them too. The same way a dream steadies you in the dark, it unsettles them into honesty they do not yet know how to hold. You listened sooner. They are still wrestling. Denial is not indifference. It is a frightened mind trying to control a faithful heart. What looks to you like rejection is often God's ventilated space around a soul that learned to survive by control and is now being retaught the feeling of safety. Silence is not a verdict against your worth. It is a workshop where he removes old armor they once needed to breathe. So here is the relief that does not depend on their phone lighting up. Believe the confirmations, bless the process, and build your life. Waiting is not a pause button. It is a workshop. Keep becoming so that timing finds you ready rather than empty. Pray, but let your prayer grow up. Not make them come now, but heal what frightens them without humiliation. Untie what binds them without breaking what is tender. Let your love become so undeniable that every counterfeit loses its charm. Let peace begin to arrive before proof does, and treat that peace as heaven's wristwatch. When peace sits where panic used to legislate, you are not getting smaller. You are finally standing at your full height. You are learning to love without turning love into leverage. You are learning to bless without bargaining and to hold desire without demanding a script. If you felt a quiet yes rise while reading this, if something in you recognized the shape of what you've been living, then let us keep walking together. We are going to decode why God repeats the same sign multiple times, how to stop mistaking mercy for coincidence, what their silence truly means from the inside, how to wait without putting your life on hold, and how to read the inner clock of peace that tells you you're near even before the message arrives. For now, let the pattern be your proof. Let the repetition be your reassurance. And let this moment be permission to release the strain of making something happen that God intends to deliver by ripeness, not by panic. If this spoke to your spirit, subscribe now, so these confirmations find you exactly on the days when doubt gets loud. One simple click, and you won't have to search for this frequency. It will find you, just as it did today. When God intends for a fragile heart to endure a long silence without surrendering to cynicism, He does not rely on a single flare fired once into a dark sky. He builds a constellation. He lets the same truth arrive from different directions until your soul cannot honestly call it random anymore. You notice how the signs change costume but keep the same voice. A name appears where statistics say it shouldn't. Then a song narrates an unwritten chapter of your story. Then a dream carries dialogue you could not have invented on your own. Then a date returns like a homing bird. At first, you try to be clever with it, to keep your faith respectable, to guard your heart by refusing to be moved. But repetition is patient. It does not shout you down. It outlasts your suspicion. It meets you on ordinary mornings and late commutes and quiet hallways until the most honest sentence you can form is the simplest one. This is real. Not a command to chase a person. Not a permission slip to force a moment. Simply a witness that heaven is speaking and that mercy is stubborn. Mercy looks like repetition because memory is a leaky vessel. God knows how loud delay can feel inside a chest that wants to do right. He knows how a hard week can swallow a single, beautiful sign. So He does not leave your future to the mercy of your mood. He stacks planks beneath your feet. He manufactures a pattern strong enough to carry you across those days when nothing visible moves. Every echo you have experienced was not random entertainment. It was construction, a bridge being built while you were busy talking yourself out of believing. Repetition is not there to make you dramatic. It is there to make you durable. It re-educates your attention, shifting it from scavenger hunt to stewardship, from chasing omens to recording faithfulness. When the same note plays enough times, your nervous system begins to relax in its key, and the body that used to brace for disappointment learns what safety feels like again. Perhaps the most misunderstood element of these recurring signs is that they are rarely solitary broadcasts. They are often synchronized transmissions. Heaven speaks on both shores at once, to you and to them, with different immediate results. You feel recognized and steadied. They feel recognized and exposed. The same warmth that comforts you can melt ice they depended on to keep feelings contained. And melted ice makes a mess before it waters anything. That is why you have witnessed the peculiar rhythm of a day, dense with signs for you, aligning with a day of unusual unrest for them. Your ledger fills while their defenses crack. You bless while they bargain. It is tempting to take their bargaining personally, to treat their delay as a verdict against your worth. But delay is data. Delay says that truth touched a tender place. Delay says the old rules are failing and new courage has not yet taken the job. The pattern persists to keep you steady while God, with unspectacular skill, removes sutures that healed crooked. There is a holy humility required to live with repeated confirmation without turning it into currency. You will feel the pull to leverage it, to announce it, to demand that others treat your private mercies as public proof. Resist that pull. The signs were sent as oxygen, not as argument. They are meant to be breathed, not brandished. When you clutch them like trophies, insecurity spends them and you feel poor again by nightfall. When you receive them like breath, they strengthen the part of you that must endure the unremarkable days with dignity. In this way, the pattern does its deepest work. It turns you from a collector of miracles into a custodian of peace. It trains you to treat small confirmations as enough, not because small is glamorous, but because small is sustainable. Glamour burns fast and burns out. Peace burns slow and warms the whole house. You may still find yourself asking how to tell the difference between heaven's grammar and the mind's inventions. The answer comes not from argument, but from effect. Real confirmation settles you rather than spins you. It makes you kinder in rooms that cannot benefit you. It frees you to take care of ordinary responsibilities without narrating them for an audience. It does not recruit you into surveillance or force you into choreography you will regret. After a true sign, You notice your breath deepen on its own. You feel gratitude that does not need to be posted to stay real. You are able to bless the other person's process even when it inconveniences your timeline. And somehow that blessing does not empty you. It enlarges you. Pretend omens collapse under sleep. The real ones survive the night and greet you in the morning without your help. This is not mystical elitism. It is practical discernment that lets your nervous system stop mistaking adrenaline for anointing. As the weeks pass, repetition also educates your prayer. In the beginning, the human ache wants receipts. You find yourself asking for another sign and then another, as if heaven were a vending machine and reassurance could be purchased on demand. Over time, though, the pattern itself satisfies the need for proof, and your petitions mature. Your words turn outward. You start asking for their fear to be healed without humiliation, for chains to fall without breaking tender places, for their ears to recognize the voice you have been hearing so that they are not wooed by counterfeits pretending to offer safety. This shift is not pious theater. It is authority. It moves mountains inside you and mysteriously shortens distances between you. You become a participant in mercy rather than a beggar for signs. The confirmations do not stop when this happens. They change flavor. They become quieter and deeper, like a bass note you can feel in your bones. They do not pull at you, they undergird you. There is also the matter of jealousy and the anxious stories it writes. Repetition helps, here too, not by erasing evidence you wish you had not seen, but by giving you a steadier ruler to measure it against. When a post, a rumor, or a carefully curated image tries to catechize you into despair, you can hold it against the length of what God has patiently built, and your heart knows which is heavier. The pattern does not deny data. It refuses to be discipled by it. It lets you step back from microphones that demand a reaction and return to the quieter work of becoming who you promised to be long before any confirmation arrived. You drink the water. You keep the boundary. You complete the task you told yourself you would complete. These small obediences tilt the room back into true and protect your dignity from 1,000 unnecessary speeches. Eventually, repetition begins to narrow. General signs become specific. What once arrived as names and numbers begins to land as phrases only the two of you would recognize. Timings too precise for sentimentality to claim. Opportunities that close the wrong doors as surely as they open the right ones. This is the stage where panic pretends to be initiative. Everything in you will want to accelerate. Everything in God will quietly ask you to preserve the atmosphere you labored to build. Birth requires calm in the room. Fulfillment does not need you to manufacture momentum. It needs you to guard the tone so the new thing can stand without wobbling. This is why the most courageous people often look deceptively quiet in their final stretch. They are not disengaged. They are protecting a beginning from the noise that could make it stumble. So let the pattern do what it was sent to do. Let it steady your eyes, slow your breath, and keep your hands from grasping at what ripeness will deliver without being pushed. Let it teach you to prefer clean prayers to clever arguments, stewardship to spectacle, peace to proof. The God who repeats also completes. And the path between those two verbs is shorter than it looks when you are no longer negotiating with fear. When the hour comes, and it will come, you will not need to convince yourself you are not dreaming. You will recognize the tone because you have rehearsed it. You will recognize the pace because you have practiced it. You will recognize the person, whether it is them transformed or a holiness you did not expect, because your spirit has been trained to greet truth without panic. And that, more than any single sign, is the masterpiece repetition was painting all along. Begin here, where the ache is honest. The quiet you are hearing is not proof that you misread heaven. It is proof that heaven is working in a room you cannot enter. Silence can feel like a verdict, because it leaves so much space for your fears to rehearse their arguments. But in the kingdom of God, silence is more often an operating theater than a courtroom. What looks to you like indifference is frequently an interior negotiation in which their history is arguing against their hope. If you could stand at the window of their soul, you would see a heart that surges toward you and a mind that slams the brakes, a hand that reaches for the phone in imagination and sets it down in reality. 1,000 what-ifs competing with one stubborn of course. The distance you feel does not measure your worth. It measures the radius of their fear and the length of the road God is patiently shortening inside them. People who have been cut deeply learn to worship control. Control once saved them from chaos, so they mistake it for wisdom. They promise themselves never to need what could one day abandon them, and then call that vow maturity. When soul recognition arrives, when God threads your name through their day, your presence through their dreams, their control begins to crack, and cracks terrify those who survived by fortifying. They become experts in amnesia. They file away the moment that felt like home and bury it under tasks and noise. They keep moving because stillness makes the truth louder. The more undeniable the pull becomes, the more loudly old reflexes shout, insisting that surrender equals collapse and intimacy equals danger. You are tempted to take this as contempt. It is not contempt. It is a frightened system attempting to manage a faithful heart. God does not shame that system. He retrains it. He speaks in the language nervous systems understand: repetition, gentleness, timing. And he does his work without asking you to supervise. This is why your ledger of confirmations often fills on the same days their denial grows tense. You see their name 3 times before lunch, while they spend the afternoon fighting a thought they cannot shake. You wake from a dream that steadies you, while they wake unnerved because a person they tried to forget stood in the doorway of their sleep and asked a question without words. The timing is not cruel. It is kind. Heaven is making sure you have rope for the climb, while he helps them stop bracing every time the ground feels like it might give way. Their delay is not nothing. Delay is data. It says truth has touched a tender place. It says the old rules are failing and new courage has not yet taken the job. It says God has his hands on bones that healed crooked and is setting them straight, and bones do not reset without protest. Inside this process, silence becomes a teacher for you as well. It teaches you to stop personalizing what is not personal and to stop translating every pause into a verdict. It teaches you to bless instead of bargain, to hold your boundaries as acts of stewardship rather than as weapons of leverage. It teaches you to live. Waiting is not a glass box where you stand and watch hope evaporate. It is a workshop where you build a life that will not collapse when promise arrives. If you allow silence to define you, you will shrink to the size of someone else's confusion. If you allow silence to refine you, you will grow into the person who can carry joy without making it pay for the pain that came before. The difference is not romantic luck, it is discipleship of attention. You choose to fix your gaze on what God has already said, rather than on the noise that moods invent in empty rooms. You choose to breathe, to sleep like someone loved, to move your body, to keep your word to yourself, to practice honesty in small conversations no one will ever quote online. These ordinary fidelities convert a waiting room into holy ground. Silence also re-educates your prayer life. Early on, your petitions circle around relief. You ask for a message, a knock, a sign loud enough to drown doubt. Over time, as you learn the language of heaven's patience, your words turn outward. You start praying for them by name, not as a means of pulling them closer, but as an act of releasing them to God's precision. You ask that their fear be healed without humiliation, that chains fall without breaking tender places, that they taste love so real counterfeits lose their charm. Something shifts when you do this. You move from petitioner to partner, from anxious lover to intercessor. Intercession does not make you noble. It makes you useful. It turns your ache into fuel for something larger than your personal outcome. It shortens the distance between recognition and readiness because it invites God to work with a freedom your neediness once tried to manage. Because we are telling the truth. We must speak about jealousy and the stories it writes. Silence gives jealousy room to dress conjecture in facts and to baptize surveillance as wisdom. Do not let screenshots become your scripture. On the day a photograph tempts you to believe that love has moved on without you, hold it against the weight of what God has quietly built in you. Patterns are heavier than pictures. Training is stronger than rumor. If your breath shortens and your shoulders rise and your fingers reach for a performance you will regret, step back. The way you handle that moment matters more for your future than the content of the post in front of you. You have spent months, perhaps years, teaching your body the feel of peace. Do not abandon that dialect to speak panic fluently again. Return to the sentence that steadies everything. What is mine by truth will never require me to betray myself to keep it. There will be times you fail this test. You will send a message that belongs to adrenaline instead of honesty. You will perform a defense in front of an audience who does not need to attend. When it happens, refuse shame's invitation to spiral. Repentance is faster. Acknowledge the misstep, repair what requires repair, and return to your cadence. Heaven's patience is not exhausted by one day of forgetting who you are. The point of this season was never to graduate you into flawless behavior. It was to graduate you into a durable identity. Durable people recover quickly because they have practiced it. You are allowed to begin again as many times as it takes for beginning again to become your instinct. If you handle silence this way, if you let it mature you instead of embitter you, something miraculous happens long before the phone lights up. You begin to feel okay in rooms that used to make you perform. You bless them in sentences you do not need them to hear. You experience freedom that is not indifference, but clean love. The kind that can say come, the kind that can say go in peace, the kind that remains itself in either case. And then, without trumpet or spectacle, the weather shifts. The signs sharpen rather than multiply. The peace that used to be a visitor becomes a resident. You stop calculating how much you can endure and start noticing how much you have become. This is the mercy hidden in a long quiet. By the time God opens the door, you are no longer begging the future to rescue you from your present. You have built a present worth sharing. If their process brings them to you refined and ready, you will recognize it without fanfare because you have been practicing that tone for months. If their process leads them somewhere else, you will not discover yourself empty-handed. You will discover that the love you are preparing to give is alive in you, capable of moving through your work, your friendships, your prayer, your every ordinary day. So take the quiet less personally and more sacramentally. Let it be the room where God teaches two souls different lessons at the same time. To one, that safety can live inside surrender. To the other, that faith can live without possession. When the silence finally breaks, it will not break like glass shattered by a shouted demand. It will open like a window in a room that has been aired for months, fresh and honest and paced. You will not need to force proof or gather witnesses. You will see the shape of what stands before you and speak the sentence your spirit has been rehearsing every time you chose integrity over urgency. Of course. Not because you were promised a particular ending, but because you were promised a faithful God, and He has been faithful to both of you all along. Waiting becomes a wound when you mistake it for a waiting room with plastic chairs and fluorescent lights where your only job is to stare at a closed door. God never intended you to sit there losing color. He invited you into a workshop, a studio where breath and choices keep shaping the person who will meet the promise without asking it to save them. The confirmations you received were not signals to stop living until a message arrives. They were permission slips to live more fully, to turn down the volume of panic and turn up the practice of becoming. If you let this season teach you, you will discover a strange power hidden in ordinary hours. A morning that starts with presence rather than performance. A body that learns safety again, a mind that submits to peace as a teacher and not an accessory. A soul that refuses to auction its integrity for a moment of relief. This is holy labor. quiet and unglamorous. And yet, it is the very labor that shortens distances you cannot measure with clocks. Begin where life actually happens, in the body that carries your prayers. A nervous system living on alarm will reinterpret every pause as rejection and every silence as danger. You cannot reason with a body that is braced for impact. You must retrain it until it recognizes peace by feel. This is why breath has become your sacrament and light your daily liturgy. You put water in your cells before you put stories in your head. You let sunlight touch your face before screens borrow your attention. You move, not to achieve a certain image, but to remind bones and blood that you are not a problem to be solved. You are a person to be held. As the body calms, theology can finally speak. The ideas you profess about God's goodness stop hovering above your life and start inhabiting it. The same heart that once raced at the sound of their name begins to steady at the sound of your own, spoken kindly, without conditions. From this steadier ground, identity stops being a rumor. You remember sentences about yourself that you can practice rather than perform. You decide that truth will be spoken earlier, that peace will be stewarded before preference, that you will not chase what is not meeting you at the pace of your dignity. You do not make announcements about these decisions. You keep them, and you keep them again until your nervous system believes you. When loneliness tempts you to negotiate your boundaries for a hit of closeness, you choose coherence instead. Inside that choice, a miracle occurs. Respect for yourself ceases to be a concept and becomes a climate. People who thrive in honesty can breathe there. People who require chaos to feel alive cannot. Without a single speech, you have started to curate the kind of room where real love can live. Waiting turns dangerous when you forget you have a calling larger than your ache. Your life is not antechamber furniture. There is work that would still matter if no text ever arrived, and that work is how God keeps you from worshiping outcomes. You put your hands to it on purpose, not to distract yourself from pain, but to invite meaning to keep company with pain until meaning has the louder voice. You finish what you start. You show up where you promise to show up. You create beauty that does not demand an audience and competence that does not require applause. You pay the bill that has waited too long. You study something that expands your world beyond a single storyline. In doing so, you become far more than a person hoping to be chosen. You become a person who chooses, daily, to be faithful. Promise rarely lands in empty rooms. It prefers houses where the lights are on and the table is already set with simple, honest bread. Prayer matures in the same workshop. Early on, your petitions circle around the alleviation of tension. You ask for another sign, another coincidence, another headline in the sky that makes patience unnecessary. Heaven, patient as always, keeps speaking in its native grammar and waits for your heart to learn a richer language. It arrives the day you stop rehearsing requests that turn the other person into a solution and begin interceding for them as a soul. You ask for fear to lose its arguments without their humiliation. You ask for chains to fall off without tearing what is tender. You ask for their ears to grow familiar with the voice of love so counterfeits cannot seduce them with safety that is not safe. And something mysterious happens in you when you pray this way. Your ache is not erased, but it is ennobled. It stops trying to own and starts learning to bless. You become a conduit rather than a consumer. Intercession is not passive spirituality, it is participation. It moves quietly, like roots moving underground. And yet, it changes what can grow above the surface. Community becomes part of the medicine. You choose conversations that stabilize rather than sensationalize. Voices that speak to your identity rather than your insecurity. You refuse the algorithm that trains you to associate love with urgency and collapse. You step into rooms where calm is normal and drama looks as out of place as a firework in a library. You learn to be seen without performing and loved without bribing. As you do, jealousy loses its tutoring power. The image that used to send you spinning becomes a data point that cannot compete with the mass of what God has built in you. You can bless their process even when it inconveniences your timeline, because blessing has become your posture rather than your strategy. You can close an app before it catechizes your nervous system into scarcity again. And you can open a window and breathe air that has not been optimized to trigger you. None of this is glamorous, and that is the point. You are converting love from a spectacle into a stewardship. The person who will sit across from you when timing ripens does not need a performer. They need a person who knows how to remain themselves in the presence of desire. Remaining yourself means you can say yes without breaking promises to your future self. No without punishing anyone. Not yet without feeling ashamed for needing pace. It means you will not surrender the schedule God taught your nervous system to trust. It means that even as your heart hopes, your hands continue to do honest work, because a life that is worthy of partnership is worthy in its own right. Grief does not vanish in this process. She changes roles. She sits by a window instead of driving the car. When she visits, you let her say what needs saying, and then you put your feet on the ground and perform one ordinary act with care. Fold the shirt, water the plant, reply to the email that requires humility. Ordinary acts are sacraments in waiting seasons. They whisper to your body, we are not suspended in time. We are moving through it with God. And that whisper, in 1,000 iterations, becomes confidence that does not depend on outcomes. You begin to trust your own consistency. You begin to enjoy your own company. You begin to glimpse a future where love arrives as a guest, welcomed into a home, not as a paramedic summoned to a scene. If you are tempted to believe this is simply self-improvement with a halo, watch what happens to your peace. It stops behaving like a mood and starts behaving like a jurisdiction. You make decisions from it. You protect it without apology. You let it be the proof you require in every conversation. If peace leaves the room to make something possible, you let that possibility pass. This is not rigidity. It is reverence. It is the holy stubbornness that refuses to trade tomorrow's wholeness for tonight's adrenaline. And from this reverence, a paradox blooms. The more you behave as if you are already loved, the more lovable you become. Not because you have perfected yourself, but because you are not asking another human to carry the burden of your worth. Keep going like this, and you will not arrive at fulfillment starved and shaking. You will arrive nourished, practiced, fluent in the tone of the very thing you prayed for. If their process brings them to you ready, you will not have to contort to accommodate truth. Truth will fit as if it knew your address. If their path leads elsewhere, you will discover that nothing of the investment was wasted. The discipline, the prayer, the boundaries, the quiet excellence, the tenderness you learn to extend without owning, all of it remains yours. It will spill into your calling, your friendships, your future, and into the love that does come, in the hour appointed, bearing the same peace you have been rehearsing all along. Waiting that refuses to pause life becomes formation. Formation makes you durable. And durable people are the ones God loves to trust with promises that were never meant to break under the weight of panic. Heaven does not hand you a calendar. It places a weather system inside your chest and teaches you to read it. The most trustworthy forecast is not adrenaline masquerading as certainty, not a rush that surges and vanishes like surf, but a quiet equilibrium that arrives without external cause and refuses to leave when the wind changes. Peace is heaven's wristwatch. It does not need applause to keep time. It does not require a headline to justify itself. It sits down where panic used to legislate and, without raising its voice, changes the law of the room. When this peace appears before any evidence does, it is not apathy dressed up. It is alignment. It means your part of the preparation has crossed from effort into readiness, from clenching into open-handed strength. The same name that once tightened your throat now allows your breath to lengthen. The impulse to monitor, measure, and manage dissolves into the ability to bless without bargaining. Nothing outside has moved yet. And yet the landscape inside is different enough that you can feel the floor hold. It is essential to separate true peace from the numbing that wears its clothes. Apathy shuts down desire to avoid disappointment, mutes the heart so it cannot be hurt, and calls the silence maturity. Peace does the opposite. It keeps desire honest while stripping it of its need to control. It makes you more attentive, not less. You notice small mercies you used to ignore. You tell the truth sooner, with fewer words. You can sit in a room you once performed in and remain yourself, because you no longer need to audition for outcomes to justify your worth. This interior shift is not theory. It is physiology. Your jaw loses its old grip on your sentences. Your shoulders stop rising to your ears when uncertainty enters. Your sleep stops bargaining for relief. In this chemistry, the mind becomes a student again, and the body, finally convinced that safety can live in surrender, lets God's timing be God's timing without translating every pause into danger. Peace is also the language of nearness. Many try to measure proximity to fulfillment by counting messages, tracking sightings, decoding pixels and posts. Heaven counts differently. In the economy of God, you are nearer when your inner world and your outer actions agree. You are nearer when you can think of this person and feel warmth without grasping. You are nearer when a clean "not yet" does not throw you back into self-judgment. You are nearer when a sign arrives and your first instinct is gratitude rather than the urge to leverage it. This congruence shortens distances, not because you maneuvered better, but because God can steer a life that is moving in truth. Peace, sustained and uncomplicated, makes you highly steerable. And steerable hearts arrive on time, even when they do not know the date. Because you have lived for a while on borrowed surges, peace may feel unfamiliar at first, even suspiciously quiet. The old mind, missing the drama it once mistook for confirmation, will try to manufacture problems so it can get its job back. It will write courtroom scripts and rehearse confrontations. It will present hypothetical crises and demand tests you cannot administer. Do not argue with this reflex. Out-practice it. Breathe longer than your fear would prefer. Step into sunlight and let your eyes touch a horizon that is wider than your storyline. Do one ordinary task you promised yourself yesterday and complete it with care. Revisit the quiet ledger where you recorded what God already repeated and allow memory to become scaffolding again. These small obediences are not distractions from spirituality. They are how peace becomes muscle memory. You are teaching your nervous system a new association. Uncertainty does not require performance to be survivable. There will be days when external data try to catechize you back into panic. A photograph appears, an ambiguous sentence floats past, a rumor presents itself as fact. In those moments, peace does not ask you to deny what you see. It asks you to refuse discipleship under it. Step back from the screen that is feeding you a story and check the room inside. Notice whether the old tightness has returned and whether your next move would require you to betray a boundary you set on a clearer day. If your clarity cannot survive a night's sleep, it was not clarity. It was adrenaline doing an impression of intuition. Let morning be your ally. Let silence be your ally. Let the same God who repeated himself in mercy be trusted to repeat himself again if you truly need correction. Panic makes you loud. Peace makes you precise. Precision protects beginnings. If you slip, and you will sometimes, peace is not punitive. Perhaps you sent the message your courage has to clean up. Perhaps you performed a defense you now wish you could unstage. Do not spiral into shame. It elongates delay by pretending love must be earned again. Repentance is faster. Name the error, repair what is yours, and return to the cadence that was forming you. The clocks of heaven are patient with learners. Their goal is not to showcase your polish, but to stabilize your core so you cannot be thrown by the weather you once worshipped. Every time you return quickly, peace becomes less a visitor and more a resident. The room learns your default. You learn your default. The next wind finds less to move. In time, You discover that peace carries prophecy embedded in it. It does not announce dates, but it marks thresholds. One day you realize you are grateful for the waiting itself, not because pain is holy, but because perseverance has grown muscles you secretly wanted. Patience that is not numb, longing that is not frantic, hope that is not manipulative. Gratitude arrives uninvited and sits where grumbling used to sit. That gratitude is a sign, as clear as any headline dream, that a unit of heaven's curriculum has closed inside you. The bell has not rung outside yet, but you have advanced, and inward advancement calls events forward. Around this time, patterns often sharpen rather than multiply. Confirmations become specific in ways sentimentality could not have scripted. The temptation will be to interrupt the process with a dramatic gesture. Resist it. When a birth crowns, the room grows quieter. You are guarding a delivery, not staging a show. All of this training, the breath, the boundaries, the refusal to be discipled by pixels, the swift returns after small failures, prepares you for the tone of fulfillment. When it arrives, you will recognize it because it sounds like what you have been practicing. It is not chaos with a pretty face you must manage to keep. It is alignment you are free to honor. It will not require you to break the very commitments that made you whole. It will fit the architecture of the life you built in the workshop of waiting. It will respect the pace your nervous system learned to love. It will speak apology and intention without asking you to parent either. And because you have stopped worshiping proof, you will not need public ceremony to trust what you see. You will simply answer with the sentence, "A healed spirit keeps ready for the right hour." Of course, until that hour strikes in both worlds, let peace do the job it was sent to do. Let it keep you punctual to your own life, on time to your morning and your work, on time to your friendships and your rest, on time to the prayer that makes you useful rather than merely soothed. Let it determine your yes and your no. Let it be the ruler you hold against every invitation, so that anything that requires you to leave yourself to grasp it can leave without your participation. This is not smallness. It is sovereignty under God. It is what allows you to meet tomorrow standing, hands open, schedule honored, integrity intact. In such a posture, reunion cannot inflate you and redirection cannot break you, because your anchor is not an outcome. Your anchor is the one who taught your body how to tell time. There is a moment when the steady knock of confirmation stops feeling like rescue flares in the night and starts feeling like a quiet briefing before arrival. You notice it first not in the sky, but in your stance. You are no longer leaning forward trying to make something happen with your will. You are standing upright in a life you have been faithfully building, a life that would remain beautiful even if the story turned left. That posture is not indifference. It is the consequence of formation. Repetition has finished its deepest assignment in you. It has trained your nervous system to prefer truth over spectacle, peace over proof, stewardship over performance. Fulfillment recognizes that posture the way a key recognizes a lock. It was carved to turn where you have chosen to stand. Between confirmation and fulfillment is not a hallway to sprint. It is a room to furnish. In that room, you have been replacing panic with patience, bargaining with gratitude, secrecy with clean words and clear pace. You have learned to keep your boundaries without ceremony and to let desire remain honest without demanding control. Every ordinary day, you chose coherence over drama, became a piece of furniture that readiness could sit on. So when the door finally opens, the event does not have to stabilize the room. The room is already stable. The person who steps through will meet you as you actually are, not as a performer auditioning for a role called worthy. This is what it means to meet in wholeness. Love arrives and finds you recognizable, to yourself, to God, and to the life you practice when no one is watching. Fulfillment, when it approaches, rarely wears trumpets. It borrows the tone you have been rehearsing. You wake into a morning that does not hum with urgency. It hums with rightness. You work not to distract yourself, but because your work has become worship rather than anesthesia. Somewhere in a day like that, something simple happens. A note lands without theatrics. A conversation begins without choreography. A face you know appears without the old armor. You feel your heart stay seated in your chest while your mouth speaks with the clarity you promised it. You do not run for witnesses or compose a victory speech in your head. You do the most radical, grown thing you can do. You remain yourself. Remaining yourself is not passive. It is the fiercest fidelity you can offer the God who formed you in the waiting. It sounds like answering with clean sentences rather than clever ones. It looks like asking honest questions without building traps beneath them. It feels like honoring the pace your body trusts, even when adrenaline begs you to accelerate. It chooses to bless awkward beginnings because authenticity is always a little awkward at first. It refuses the old bargain where you trade your peace for proximity. The person before you will disclose who they have become by the way they treat what is delicate. You will disclose who you have become by the way you refuse to shrink to keep a moment comfortable. Wholeness holds the door open for truth and does not apologize for the light that enters. If fulfillment is genuine, it will resemble the peace you practiced. Apology will not audition for applause. Ownership will not ask you to parent it. Intention will not sprint to outrun uncertainty. The new chapter will not require you to break the boundaries that made you whole. It will naturally respect them. The connection will fit the architecture of the life you built while you waited, as if the room had been measured for it. Days will keep their shape. Sleep will keep its kindness. Work will keep its worship. Friendship will not be mortgaged to fund romance. You will hear tomorrow discussed without stealing from today. This is alignment, not accident, and your spirit will recognize it with the soft answer it has rehearsed 100 quiet evenings. Of course, old shadows will test the light. The mind may reach for familiar suspicions, and the body may brace for the other shoe. Do not panic at these echoes. Invite them into the room you furnished. Tell fear who you are now. Show the anxious part the shoes you're actually wearing. Planted, steady, unwilling to run ahead of grace. If you notice yourself slipping toward performance, step back into the practices that made you durable. Breath that lengthens instead of shortens. Truth spoken early instead of hoarded. One faithful task done well. So your day remembers its dignity. Joy does not need to be loud to be real. Let it be gentle and long-shelved. Protect your beginning from the spotlight that turns tenderness brittle. Small circles and honest schedules are not signs of doubt. They are signs of stewardship. Sometimes fulfillment arrives as a different configuration than the one you dared to picture. A redirection can carry the same holiness as a reunion when you have learned to value God's voice above your storyboard. In that case, the work you have done does not evaporate. It deploys. The muscles you built in waiting become the strength you use in calling, in friendship, in the new love that will one day arrive, carrying the same peace you have learned to trust. Confirmation was never only about a person. It was about your capacity to hear and hold God without turning his whispers into idols. If the chapter is reunion, you are ready to receive without grasping. If the chapter is redirection, you are ready to bless without bitterness. In both, you remain yourself. Think of the distance you traveled. Early on, you begged the future to rescue you from the present. Now you bless the present so that the future has somewhere to live. Early on, you chased signs to keep your courage from evaporating. Now the signs sit quietly in the ledger of your heart and do their work without drawing attention. Early on, you treated love like a paramedic. Now you prepare a home. The paradox is that readiness shortens time not by forcing outcomes, but by becoming the kind of ground where good things can root quickly. God loves to trust promises to people who will not worship them. So cross these last inches with the same grace that carried you across the miles. Speak plainly. Keep the pace you practiced. Let gratitude sit in the chair where need used to sit. Let peace continue to be the ruler you hold against every invitation. So anything that asks you to leave yourself can leave without your participation. If the one you have prayed for stands before you transformed, you will not need fireworks to believe what you see. If the story's holiness is revealed in a different form, you will not be empty-handed. You will possess yourself, which is to say, you will possess the very stewardship God required before He completed anything. Between confirmation and fulfillment, you have become someone who loves without leverage, waits without withering, and receives without grasping. This is wholeness. This is how promises live long. And this is why, when fulfillment finally knocks, the door it finds will already be open, the table already set, the room already bright, with a peace that was never a mood, but a way of being. Stand here a moment and notice what is different. The room is the same, the hour is ordinary, but you are not who you were when the first sign startled you into hope. Back then you were trying to hold your breath between coincidences, begging the sky for louder proof, bargaining with silence as if it were a judge you had to persuade. Now the pattern has done what it was sent to do. It taught you to read heaven's grammar, to honor the workshop hidden inside waiting, to let peace move from visitor to resident. You no longer confuse adrenaline with anointing, nor urgency with truth. You have learned to treat confirmations as oxygen rather than leverage, silence as surgery rather than sentence, and longing as fuel for intercession rather than permission to manage outcomes. Your attention has become obedient. Your breath has learned the pace of trust. Look back without flinching. Every repetition was mercy delivered ahead of schedule for the days when appearances would lie. Every quiet day was a classroom where your heart was trained to bless what God was building out of your sight. Every small fidelity, the water before the headlines, the early truth instead of the clever dodge, the boundary kept when loneliness asked you to renegotiate, became furniture in the room where promise can now sit without wobbling. You asked for a sign and received a syllabus. You asked for a date and received formation. Heaven answered the deeper prayer you did not know how to articulate. Make me someone who will not wreck what I've prayed for when it finally arrives. If reunion is the chapter God is writing, it will sound like the piece you have practiced. The words will be clean without theater. Ownership will not need applause. Intention will honor pace. The life you built will not have to shrink to make room for love. Love will fit the architecture as if it had been measured for it. Your body will recognize safety by feel, and your spirit will answer with the sentence you rehearsed on ordinary days. Of course. Not because you are entitled, but because the inner clock and the outer choreography have struck the same hour. If redirection is the chapter, its unveiling will carry the same holiness. You will bless what is real without bargaining and discover that nothing of this labor was wasted. The muscles you built, patience that is not numb, desire that is not frantic, hope that is not manipulative, remain yours. They will carry you into the work, the friendships, the future God trusts you with next. The confirmations were never about crowning a fantasy. They were about crowning maturity. Do not despise the stretch that brought you here. The miles mattered. You learned to live with your hands open, to refuse to trade tomorrow's wholeness for tonight's adrenaline, to stop auditioning for your own life. You discovered that waiting is not a glass box but a studio, that prayer is not negotiation but partnership, that peace is not a mood but a jurisdiction. You learned that what is yours by truth will never demand self-betrayal to keep it, and that what demands self-betrayal was never yours by truth. You have become someone your future can trust. That is why time feels softer now. It is not slower. It is safer. Carry this forward like a quiet vow. Keep doing the simple things that trained your attention to obey hope instead of fear. Keep blessing without needing to own, working without worshiping outcomes, resting without apology. Keep reading the weather inside your chest before letting pixels write your doctrine. Keep choosing dignity over drama and clean sentences over clever ones. None of this is performative. It is how you guard the atmosphere where good things learn to stay. And when the hour comes, because hours do come, You will not scramble for witnesses or force a celebration big enough to make belief stick. You will answer the door you have been preparing. You will sit at the table you have already set. You will speak as one fluent in the language the promise speaks, gentle and precise, grateful and unafraid. You are not crazy. You did not conjure a mirage out of hunger. God has already confirmed what your heart kept trying to deny, and He did it enough times to carry you through the quiet. He repeated to steady you. He silenced to heal them. He prepared you both so the story would not collapse under its own beauty. Whether the next page reads reunion or redirection, you are ready, because readiness was the real miracle under every other miracle. Walk now with that peace, like a name written over your doorway. Bless what led you here. Bless who you became along the way. Bless what is coming with the same calm that carried you through the waiting. The God who confirms also completes, and you have learned how to meet completion in wholeness.